The 2021 Wisconsin Science Festival. Hybrid, hands-on, and virtual. Events throughout Wisconsin for all ages. Discover the wonders of science and the power of knowledge with a focus on fungi with scientists, live Q&A sessions, science experiments, and more. Plus, PBS Wisconsin Education launches 2 new interactive labs in the Meet the Lab collection. Full schedule at wisconsinsciencefest.org. Curiosity unleashed.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Val Blair from the Wisconsin Science Festival team, and we're here with our special guests, Joe and Lane from Alliant Energy for this field trip experience. I'd like to welcome you to this Wisconsin Science Festival online field trip. So how can you participate today? Well, you'll notice that your picture and your audio are muted, but if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, you can use the Q&A feature, and I'll help get those questions to Joe and Lane. As soon as you have a question, go ahead and type that in right away and we'll ask it for you out loud. This field trip will be recorded, and as always, we ask that you do this in all activities at the Wisconsin Science Festival with a responsible adult. We'd also like to thank our sponsors and our partners that help make the Wisconsin Science Festival possible. You can find out more activities and events during the Wisconsin Science Festival at wisconsinsciencefest.org. All right, so with that, we're excited to get started. Take it away, Joe.
All right, thank you very much. Hi, my name is Joe Wasserman. I am an electrical engineer for Alliant Energy. We are a public utility that serves a good chunk of Wisconsin as well as about 70% of Iowa. So hopefully some of you got the chance to see my video, which was an introductory lesson on electricity and circuits, and we learned how to create a little LED circuit with just using a battery, some wires, and an LED light, very much like this. And we learned how to get it to light up. So if there are any questions regarding the lesson itself, I'd be very happy to answer them. But if not, I can continue on and tell a little bit about my background and how I got into STEM and engineering, how it went through from high school to college to working as a full-time engineer now, and maybe talk about some of the preconceptions about engineering that might seem like kind of a scary field to get into, a very difficult field, but some of those are myths, and we can talk through some of those. Let's see, have we got any questions?
Not just yet, but go ahead and type any of those questions that you do have into the Q&A feature. Joe, before we dive into your background, might we just hear a bit from Lane and just get to introduce everybody?
Okay. Hi, I'm Lane Greenwood. I work at Alliant Energy with Joe. I'm actually a mechanical engineer though, and I work on the natural gas side of things, so it's a little bit different. We serve a lot of Wisconsin and portions of Iowa, but I focused on, in my video, I focused on a lot more of the ideal gas law because I work a lot more with pressures, volumes, and temperatures. So I hope you guys watched the video and kind of followed through a little bit with the experiment, but I want to kind of give you guys time to ask questions from either Joe or I about the experiment or the just kind of basic concept videos that we had. And then we'll kind of go in a little bit more into our background and go into why we wanted to be engineers and everything else in between. So do we have any questions?
And the first question, and you hit the nail right on the head, Lane, is how did you know you wanted to be an engineer?
Okay. I don't know, Joe, if you want to go and do like your little presentation, if you have like specifics on it. I guess I have like photos because I'm kind of nerdy like that, but
I do have specifics. I've got a PowerPoint set up that's going to talk all about that, just how I decided to become an engineer and what it's like to become an engineer and be an engineer. So if that's the only question, I can get started with that.
Yeah, why don't we start there? I'm sure there'll be more questions as we go on.
Fantastic. All right, are we seeing everything okay?
I can see your screen, Joe.
Perfect. So I just wanted to share a little background about how I became an engineer, starting my time in high school. So I'm from Wisconsin. I grew up in Mequon, Wisconsin, and I graduated from Homestead High School in 2016. I played a couple sports. I was in some clubs like Spanish club, and two of my favorite classes were math and Spanish. And I actually got into engineering because I probably from my junior year physics class, I had a physics teacher who was an engineer all throughout his career, and kind of as a career cap, he decided to do a high school physics class and teach it. And he was a really awesome teacher, and he gave great perspectives on all of the great challenges that you can take on through engineering, how you can continue to apply math throughout your college experience and career, and just kind of made physics and engineering more accessible to a high school student, and really gave us a great introduction into that and showed us how great of a career path it could be. So as I said, one of my favorite classes was math. And once I got into physics, that was really like, you actually can take math and do something with it. So that's really how I got into engineering. I will say that I didn't know I wanted to be an engineer till probably my senior year of high school, when I was applying for colleges and stuff. And I really decided I want to go with engineering. Had no idea as to any of the types of engineering I wanted to do. So I ended up as an electrical engineer, but really I did not know much about engineering at all. But there's many different types you can go into, and most colleges have like a introductory class where you can kind of explore your different options. So that's definitely something to consider, because you don't need to know exactly what you want to be when you're in high school, nor should you. And really, you don't know exactly what you want to be in college either. So moving on, I went to UW-Madison and graduated in 2019, May of 2019. Probably end of my freshman year of college, I decided I wanted to do electrical engineering, but I know people who didn't know what kind of engineering they wanted to do till junior year. So there's really no rush and there's no pressure to decide exactly what you want to do when you're in high school or early in college. And one thing to note, as far as technical skills or technical knowledge, any sort of engineering experience I had was very limited. So you do not need to be an expert on anything when you're coming out of high school, nor should you be, because in high school, you're just learning math, you're just learning physics, you're just seeing if you are interested in science and math and technology. You're not being tested on if you know all sorts of different circuits or all sorts of different physics problems. You really do not need a very deep understanding of anything engineering when you come to college. So don't think that just because you don't have all the tech savvy now, you're not some physics wizard, that you can't become an engineer. And I would encourage you, if you just enjoy math or science, to consider it. And some hobbies I had, it wasn't all just studying for math, studying my physics, studying my circuits classes. I enjoyed lifting weights, going on runs throughout campus, exploring campus, going to all the Badgers football and basketball games. Also had some time to play video games and hang out with friends. So I wouldn't think that you're gonna lose your entire social life just studying for engineering classes. It definitely is hard, and you definitely have to put in a lot of work, but it's not going to dominate your life in a way that some people might think of engineering.
Joe, I think that's a really good point, that you can be in the science field and still have other hobbies outside of the lab or the classroom.
Absolutely. And yeah, part of our engineering outreach program at Alliant is just kind of demissing the stereotypes of engineering, that you've got to be in a lab 24/7 or crunching numbers all the time. It's not quite like that. There's a lot of balance to it, and it's important that you find your balance and what you enjoy. But yeah, it's definitely not nonstop crunching numbers. There is some time to breathe, for sure. So if you're wondering about, kind of like we were saying, if you're wondering about if you'll just be studying in the library nonstop, no, even for engineers, all the engineers I know, there's time to go to Badger games, there's time to explore campus, and there's definitely time to meet all your best friends, because you probably won't know a ton of people going in. And really, all my best friends now I met in college. So there's plenty of time to have a social life and balance things out. So I wanted to address some myths about engineering, and I think I already have addressed a few of them. So if you think like I need to be a math or a physics wizard to do engineering, I would say definitely not, because I know a lot of people who even struggled with that, but they were just really interested and willing to learn, and they were able to make it through their engineering curriculum no problem, as long as you're willing to put in some hard work. I will have no social life. I think my last two slides kind of sum that one up. That's definitely a myth, and you definitely can have a social life balance. I will learn everything on my own. It's probably the exact opposite, because I work with many different types of engineers, electricians, and project managers, all sorts of people. And really, in my company at Alliant Energy, I came in knowing not a lot about power systems, how a utility works, and I was helped every step of the way. And really, once you get out of college, you know a lot of theory, you know how to calculate a lot of stuff, but you don't really know anything job specific. And your boss and your coworkers will definitely do a great job of training you and getting you up to speed, because they don't expect you to know everything right out of college either. I need to be an expert at all things science. I think I've kind of covered that one too. Of course you won't be an expert. It's a constantly changing field, constantly evolving field, which is kind of what makes it exciting. But you'll definitely be learning new things every day. Great cliche there, but you will be learning things nonstop and you'll be constantly getting smarter. You do not need to be an expert when you walk in the door. Engineering is nerdy. Strongly disagree. I know a lot of people think that engineers are just nerds crunching numbers, but I would strongly disagree. Engineering, there's a very diverse group of engineers. There's people from all different walks of life who are engineers, and we're always looking for more diversity, more perspectives. And I would say engineering is on the cooler side of jobs that you could choose. And you need to know exactly what you want to do. I covered that one as well. Definitely not. I did not know exactly what I wanted to do until I had an internship here, and really enjoyed the company culture, and I really liked learning about the power system and trying to improve the power system with things like renewable energy, wind turbines, solar panels, things like that. Finally, some benefits about becoming an engineer. So you get to collaborate with a lot of people. So as I said, I'm working with many different types of people every day. You solve difficult problems, and you solve problems that really can improve on technology, make the world a better and safer place. And it's a constantly rewarding experience to solve those difficult problems. And you don't have to do them on your own, of course. You're working with many people, just trying to improve things, make things better. Similarly, you get to learn and do interesting things. That's kind of part of the solving difficult problems, and just actually implementing them and seeing all your work pay off. And the last thing is, career-wise, engineers are always in demand. We always need more engineers, and you can make some money. You can make a good amount of money. That's what my physics teacher in high school said. He preached that to us. You can make money being an engineer, and that's not a bad thing. So I always like to point that out, even though becoming an engineer is not about making money. It's about being happy and enjoying what you do. It's just a perk to that. So finally, this is my last slide. Working as an engineer at Alliant Energy, I had a great experience interning, kind of got my foot in the door and got to learn a little bit about the power system and how that works. And I eventually got hired as a system protection engineer, which is a type of electrical engineer that programs all the relays, which are these blue boxes on the right. And what those blue boxes do is, if we have some sort of power outage where maybe a power line hits the ground and it could cause some dangerous situation, those boxes are the computers that shut off the power and make sure that we're not damaging equipment, causing fires, any of that stuff. So really, my job is all about promoting the safety of anything near a power line, any substation we have, things like that. One thing I like about that is I have many different offices. With the pandemic, I work from home. That's one office. I have an office in Madison where I have a desk and can really focus on my work. I can go into our engineering lab, which is what you can see on the right side. That's a laboratory we have where we can do all sorts of testing and just collaboration, communication with other engineers. I can also go out in the field. I can go out and actually see these wind turbines in person. I can see generation power plants, and I can see substations as well. With that, are there any questions?
Yeah, there's a couple of questions. So number one, how long did it take to put that relay system together? That looks incredibly complicated.
That's a very good question. So yeah, we have tons of relays in there. There's probably about 40 relays. And I would say that another coworker and I probably spent we probably spent a week every afternoon after lunch. We would go down there. We'd probably be checking in on emails in the morning. We'd go down there, wire some stuff up. Yeah, it was probably about a week or so, just wiring things up, screwing things in, doing all sorts of stuff. We already had a plan going in because we basically modeled it after one of our normal substations. So like I said before, you don't need to know everything going in. A lot of engineers before you have already laid the groundwork to help you figure out what to do. So we already had a plan going in, and yeah, it was probably about 5 afternoons screwing things in and wiring things up.
Well, thank you for that. There's one question for you, Joe, before we move to hearing a little bit more about Lane's journey in science.
Yep.
Are you on call all the time? Like if you're dealing with things like when a power line goes down, do you have to go into work at every time there's a storm and something happens?
Great question. So with my department, we do have on call where if there's some sort of power outage, we might get called up if electricians or technicians are having difficulty figuring out what's wrong. So I'm on call 24/7, 1 month every 7 months. So I don't get a ton of calls because usually the electricians are really well trained and have a good understanding of what to do. But sometimes I do, and I can usually handle it all from home. I can handle it all from my computer because I can talk to those blue box computers remotely. So I can usually do it without leaving my house and take care of it within half an hour. Might get called, I don't know, 5 times a month or so.
Thank you.
Good question.
All right, Lane, do you want to take it away for a bit?
Yeah, I'll share my screen.
I can see your slides.
Okay, cool. Present. Maybe. There we go. Oop. So again, I work for Land Energy and I'm a natural gas distribution engineer. So slightly different than what Joe does. I know gas is not exactly the same as electric, thank goodness, because electric freaks me out a little bit. So I'm gonna kind of start with why I became an engineer. And I know Joe said engineering isn't nerdy, but I am a nerdy person for sure. So my dad and I always used to pick a project that we would do over the summer, and we would pick just like random fun things. So one of the projects that we ended up doing was like build a catapult or a potato cannon. And I loved doing these projects with my dad. We did a Rube Goldberg and then like lantern / hot air balloon kind of thing. And I had so much fun doing that with my dad. I love like the creative process. And of course you'd build something and then it wouldn't work the first few times and you're tweaking it and kind of figuring it out as you go along. So I loved that aspect of kind of like that creativity. And then I loved Mythbusters as well. That was like my dream job would be to be a Mythbuster. And so that was something that I really wanted to aim for, and something that really stuck with me from Mythbusters is that the only difference between messing around and science is writing it down. And I already really liked the messing around part, so I figured science was definitely where I wanted to go with my career. The final push for me to, I guess, move towards engineering was my crazy physics professor that I had in high school. He was so much fun, and he made learning physics and like actually applying it just tons of fun. We went out into the parking lot behind our high school and we used a lever arm in order to lift his car up. Like just a bunch of like random super fun things, and we're calculating it out ahead of time. And I loved being able to apply that math. So I just had so much fun doing all these projects. I wanted to keep doing fun little projects, and that's really why I decided to be an engineer. And it wasn't until probably senior year of high school I was like, okay, engineering for sure. And even then, I wasn't sure what kind of engineer I wanted to be. So, like Joe said, I was kind of winging it. When I got to college, I just picked a random, like, general engineering class and hoped for the best. And it worked out.
Blaine, before you move from this slide, how far did you get an object to launch with that catapult? That is the question.
Well, okay, so my parents had this really big yard. I think it's like at least 2 acres yard, and we launched a pumpkin from one end all the way to the other end, and it was like a pretty good sized pumpkin. It was not small, it was good sized. It was great. It smashed the pumpkin. It was wonderful. So much fun.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
So once I decided on becoming an engineer, I chose to go to UW-Platteville to get an engineering degree, and I started out as a general engineering major, so nothing specific yet, but I had a ton of fun at college. It really opened up a lot of different possibilities for me personally. Not only do you get to like learn all your basic classes, but you have so many other opportunities to do. Like there's rocketry club. I learned how to use a 3D printer. I learned how to play volleyball better than I already knew. And I tried out a bunch of different stuff. Like I tried pottery and things like that. Pottery did not end well for me, unfortunately. It was not a good class, but at least I like got to try a bunch of new things and give it a go. It definitely takes a lot of hard work for an engineering degree. Don't get me wrong, but if you really like messing around and I don't know, building things, tweaking them, and you enjoy doing some math problems and being able to apply that to real life, engineering might be the thing for you, because that's definitely what drove me to go be a Platteville pioneer. So during college, I had two internships, and I'm not going to talk too much about my first internship. It was not very good. I'll be honest. I had an internship with a seating company, and I built fire truck seats. And I learned that I am not very good at machining, and I don't really like that aspect of engineering. So it didn't work out very, very well for me, but I'm glad that I did it. So I knew that that wasn't for me in the future. And then the next internship that I had was with Alliant Energy, and that was like night and day difference. I had so much fun on this internship. I was actually part of generation in my internship, so not quite what I do right now, but we actually got to see every type of generation that they have at Alliant Energy. I met a ton of super awesome people, and so the projects that I worked on in my internship was I was looking at a natural gas generation facility, and I calculated out basically depending on how long that generation facility was running and how hot it was burning gas, and whether or not we needed to like overhaul and clean the whole facility up. And that was pretty cool. I got to go around inside the facility and go find a bunch of valves, which was cool, but there were so many spiders. It was nasty. I was like casually swatting them away as I go look valves, but it was really awesome. You can see like Joe, I think, had the same picture almost, where we were out at the wind turbine farm, and I've never seen something so large up that close. And you can actually go inside the wind turbine, and when you look up, it's not like straight up, it's like bendy, and you can see it moving in the wind. And oof, I would never want to be a wind turbine like operator. It was terrifying. We got to see a bunch of stuff like our solar plants, our hydro facilities were super cool. They were so old that when they were originally built, they actually didn't have a women's restroom. So it was a closet that they then converted into a restroom. So that was funny. And we even got to see the coal generating facility in Portage. So I got to travel all over Wisconsin for this internship and see a bunch of different people, learn a ton about generation because they don't teach you that stuff in school really. So it was a lot of really fun hands-on work that I loved, and that really made me want to be basically an engineer at Alliant Energy.
Awesome. That kind of goes along with one of the questions that we've gotten. Do you get to travel a lot in your role at Alliant?
So I traveled a lot for this internship, and for my role right now, I do a lot of my work in wintertime at my computer because we can't do construction in wintertime. So I kind of plan out all of the projects for next year. And then when it's nice outside, which is good for me, I don't want to be cold outside. I like going out when it's summertime. Then I'll go out and I'll see a lot of the construction taking place. It's really useful for me to know whether or not it's a rocky area or whether or not we have to weld in an awkward position when they're putting the pipes together. So I travel a good amount. I have offices. My home office is in Madison. I'm working from home right now. And then I have offices in Baraboo, Portage, Mauston, and Toma that I visit. So I go out a lot during the summer. Do you have any other questions before I keep going?
I'll let you continue. I think some of the other ones we can get to after your presentation.
Okay. All right. So my work day right now as a natural gas distribution engineer is kind of fun. I work with a lot of people. So this is actually just a few of my coworkers. We were in like a volleyball tournament and we hang out just outside of work as well. So we're actually really good friends. We like eat lunch together and hang out, which I really like that a lot. It's nice to be friends with your coworkers. And working with that group of people in my team of engineers and technicians out in the field, I basically take super high pressure pipeline gas and we cut down the pressure to a nice safe pressure using regulators. And then we distribute it throughout a town and safely provide it to your house through your little meter set. So I'm sure some of you guys have seen some house meter sets chilling, and that's another regulator and meter that takes high pressure gas and then cuts it down to usually only 1/4 of a pound of gas that serves your house. So I make sure that our pipes are sized correctly, the flow rates are right, the pressures are right, and I make sure that all of the safety measures are in place. So we aren't just like pumping gas into your house because that does not end well. So I make sure that it's safe and reliable for you guys when you turn on your gas furnace or stove or like water heater, any other gas appliance. A lot of the stuff that I do can be seen right here. This is a model that I've built up. So thank goodness I don't have to do all my calculations by hand because that would make me sad too. I don't just sit around like crunching numbers and try to calculate like pressures and flows. I actually take our whole piping network that we have built and I plop it into the model for pipe diameters and materials. And then I take all of the customer information that we have on how much customers use gas and I throw that in the model as well. And the model spits out and tells me what pressures are in my system, what kind of flows that I can see, if I have any pressure losses. So it really does a lot of the heavy lifting for me, which is super handy. And it makes something that's really complex a lot simpler. So I've picked up a lot since I started at my job because they don't really teach you how to be a natural gas engineer when you're in school or in high school or anything like that. So it's really just a trial and error and seeing if you like a job and then sticking with it or flip-flopping. So that's generally what I do during the day.
Lane, one of the questions that I had gotten was, what is a day in the life of an engineer at Alliant? So you just kind of answered that for us. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, and then I'll share a really cool project that I get to work on with you guys. So sometimes farms or landfills or like they take the methane from breaking down animal waste or human waste, and they harvest that methane and they spiff it all up, make it nice and clean, and then we're able to inject that back into our system and use it just like natural gas. So it's a really interesting thing, and then it makes renewable natural gas. So essentially we can use all of our farms that are already producing this waste and turn it into something way more useful. And that has been honestly the most difficult and challenging project that I've worked on, though, because everything works in reverse from what I'm typically doing. So typically everyone is pulling gas from the system. Well, here now I have a customer that's also injecting into the system. So I got to like flip flop everything around. But I was, I don't know, really excited to find out how this worked in more detail. And I was just surprised that that we could actually turn this waste into something that we could use. So maybe in your hometown, you may even be using renewable natural gas without knowing it. So we have actually quite a few projects that are going to go into place here for Alliant Energy. All right.
That's fantastic. I didn't know that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and the last thing I have is just a little bit of advice for you guys out there is four things that I've found are really important, especially if you want to be an engineer or any sort of like science related thing. Don't be scared to try something new. It's super important. You may goof it up, but at least you tried it, and you never know, you might like it. The other thing is like Joe had already kind of said, you don't have to know exactly where you're going to go right now. You're in high school. I didn't know where I was going to go even at the beginning of college, but you just kind of keep trucking along and you figure it out along the way, find out what you like. The other thing that I kind of have learned is that you will mess up. You will make mistakes, especially if you're trying new things, but it's important to learn from that mistake and keep going. So like my first internship was not a good fit for me, but I'm glad that I did it because now I know that that's maybe not the career that I want to pursue. And it really pushed me to move more towards Alliant Energy. And I really like it here. And the last thing is it can really seem like everything in front of you is like a giant mountain, especially with engineering. That seems so scary. But if you kind of keep your head down and just keep picking at it one little step at a time, I find it's a lot more manageable. It's kind of like when you go into a class and they read through the whole syllabus and you're like, I am never going to learn all this stuff. Oh my gosh. But then you just start the class, you do it one homework at a time. And then by the end, you look back and you're like, wow, I can't believe it. I did it all. I learned everything. So those are the four main things that you guys got to keep in mind. And that's all I got for you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much, both of you, for sharing your journey to get where you are as engineers at Alliant. I have a question for either or both of you. What is your favorite part of working at Alliant, and what difference do you hope to make in the world by working there?
I'm gonna do this one first. So my favorite part of working at Alliant Energy is kind of the same thing at the same time. So I really enjoy the fact that I actually get to help people. I'm not just making a product to sell to somebody. I'm really making a difference in somebody's life, whether you have electricity to turn on and have, or whether you have a warm house in wintertime. That's something so important. And Alliant Energy really puts that at like the top of part of their core values is we always care for others and really try and help other people. So that's something that I really looked for in a career. And that's definitely my favorite part is when like I calculate out a project and set it up and I save a customer a bunch of money or something like that where I can really help somebody.
For me, I would say besides going out to lunch with my coworkers all the time, my favorite part is when we do projects, do work that goes beyond our standards, beyond what we've done in the past. Things like adding really large scale solar generation and figuring out all the technical aspects of how we can tie that into the system. It's not as plug and play as most people think. So there's a lot of challenges there, but it's fun to be doing new things, mixing it up. So I really enjoy that aspect of it.
Thank you. So you guys work at Alliant Energy. There's a question that is wondering if you work with MG&E, which is Madison Gas and Electric. Do you work with entities like that, or are you competitors? How does that work?
Yep. So As utilities, utilities actually have a monopoly. So we have service territory, and customers don't get to choose whether they get electricity and gas from MG&E or Alliant. So we don't compete with them in a traditional sense like companies would compete for customers. The only thing we could compete for them for would be getting really good engineers. But I do work with engineers at MG&E and ATC, American Transmission Company, We Energies, and other utilities like that very frequently. For when our systems connect to each other, we need to figure out who's buying power from who's selling the power, which way is it going, how much power is flowing in either direction. So we have meters for that. And it's just communication between the engineering at different companies and us.
Hmm. It's a lot of like working together, even though you are kind of competing. It's weird. It's kind of like your siblings, you know, but you still help each other out every once in a while. So yeah, it is weird.
Awesome. And I have one final question before we wrap up. So if there are any other questions out there, go ahead and get them in the Q&A. Maybe we can get them answered in the next couple minutes here. But the question is, do you build a lot of things from scratch, or do you add to things that are already existing? Like, you know, kind of what is it? Is it a mixture of both?
I would say for the majority of, well, I would say it's probably a pretty good split. So majority of it, I'm like building off of towns that already have a whole gas network built in. So I'm like adding little bits and pieces here and there. Maybe I make a little change off of this. So it's a lot of tweaking, but there are projects that come up like that renewable natural gas project, or sometimes we have like whole new gate stations where we're taking in a new source of gas that we kind of designed from scratch. So it really depends on the situation for me.
Yeah, for me too. Newer types of projects that we don't do 100 times a year, like solar or wind, any sort of generation stuff. There might be some designs from scratch, but really we have experience in pretty much anything, or some engineer at the company will have experience in something. So it's not all off the top of your head. It's all knowledge that gets passed down, and just kind of it's a lot of changing up of standards, changing up of designs, but you don't need to build something from scratch necessarily. And there's lots of different people working on every project.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Well, we are just about out of time. Thank you everyone for joining us at the Wisconsin Science Festival. And thank you to our field trip presenters, Joe and Lane. A recording of this field trip may be available, and we'll follow up with teachers about that directly. Remember that the Wisconsin Science Festival continues with events hosted from organizations across the state, and you can participate in them all the next couple of days. So just check out wisconsinsciencefest.org for more fun science. And thank you again, Lane and Joe, and everybody have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks, guys.